If the speakers will take their chairs again, we have 10 minutes before we're going to have to leave again. We're in a North Carolina four-corner stall in the Congress, and so we're going to have to dodge between votes. My question, I guess, is this. If we do nothing, what is the problem? Or is there a problem? And if we're going to do something, what is the best way to go about doing it? Now, I listened to Mr. Basharoff and others talk about the things that we add in, or even Mr. Weller's idea of taking somebody with $18,000 income and adding in costs, and that brings them up to $30,000, and therefore they're no longer in poverty. How then they wouldn't qualify for the things that got them out of poverty? I mean, that's a kind of a catch-22. So what I'm interested in is hearing from you. What is the best way for us to proceed with this? If you think that there is some compelling reason why we should do something. I know you don't think we need to or can do it, but we're sort of megalomaniac in the Congress, so I think we can do anything. And you go ahead.
Well, no. I think you should do things. I think what you can't do successfully is change, quote, the official poverty line. The NAS report, which we've heard a lot about, says there, oh, and you know, we're not really talking about the poverty measure used for program eligibility. That's an entirely separate decision. I think those are key words, entirely separate decision, because the considerations that go into program eligibility, as you just pointed out, are very different from trying to keep track of the economic or material well-being of low-income Americans. Quickly, I'll get off the floor. Here's what I think you should do in 3 extra easy steps or whatever. I don't think you can affect the official poverty measure without having a broad congressional consensus about raising spending across the board for means-tested programs. Otherwise, you've got to disconnect the official poverty measure from every program that exists. I think... Can
I stop you there?
Yeah.
Haven't we disconnected it now by using 200% of poverty all over the place?
Yes and no.
I mean, that's what I listened to you, and I thought about my days in the state legislature and how Washington State was always pushing above the poverty line, and no deed goes unpunished, but...
Here's what I would say about that, but you're the pros. Right now, programs are at some multiple of the poverty line. As you mentioned, it's a few hundred. State grant programs, federal grant programs that are formula-driven are often driven by the poverty measure. So if the poverty measure is changed, then every subcommittee and then every committee of the Congress has to disconnect and redo it. Then both houses of Congress have to agree.
I understand the problems of politics. Let me hear some others, how you think we should do it, because he basically doesn't think we should. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
You got a minute.
I think the key in moving forward is to say, in doing a revision of the poverty standards and measurements, it does not automatically lead to changes affecting program eligibility or allocation of federal resources. Sever the link between them and say, for each individual program, for each federal benefit that is allocated on the basis of the poverty line, that it will now be appropriate to make a judgment of how to proceed, but don't do it automatically.
Yes.
I'd say that the main thing that you want a poverty line for in terms of federal programs is figuring out who you need to serve. Who you need to serve, who's in need.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so what you need is the best measure for that purpose. And in the long run, that's going to help you design better programs. And worrying about how it does or doesn't affect your existing programs in the short run isn't the first priority. You really ought to be looking at what are you trying to get to, not what is the short run effect. In terms of the short run effect, we revise all the other statistics we use for the government. The CPI has gone through a whole bunch of revisions done by committee that have been at least as controversial as anything that we're talking about for poverty. And it affects even more programs than the poverty line does. So that's not an impossible problem.
Are you then suggesting something in the Census Bureau, or I don't know where that function is, but some place that would function continually as a annual update, much as we do with the trustees on Medicare and Social Security, that same sort of thing? Is that what you're talking about?
Yep, something like that could be done, or you could do what the Bureau of Labor Statistics does to update the CPI, where they have a committee that meets on a periodic basis, comes up with recommendations, and then they're implemented. That kind of an approach, where you have a built-in periodic review, you come up with recommendations, they get implemented.
And does it require that in doing that, you also say that what their goal is? Do we have to set the goal, or do we let the commissions do that?
I think you can, to some extent, let the commission do that, but overall, I think that for policy-related purposes, the goal ought to be figuring out who's in need.
So if you're going to deal with children's poverty, talk about what that is, and then adjust the poverty line for whatever that.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. I want to go to my colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I'd just like to ask unanimous consent to put a copy of H.R. 3243 along with the introduction statement in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this hearing.
I'm glad
sorry.
you put it in, because I think we need to have some things on the table to start talking
Absolutely. Ideas are, you got to have ideas and discuss them, right? And I'm sorry, I apologize to our witnesses today for the interruptions here. As a member of the minority party, all we're asking for is the opportunity to offer amendments, which is normally part of the legislative process, but we're denied that opportunity on the floor today on the S-chip legislation. In committee and Ways and Means, we did have that opportunity, but the Commerce Committee shut them down, and so we would like just to have the opportunity, which we gave when we were in the majority, gave the other minority at the time. Mr. Usheroff, you're the contrarian today amongst the group, and I noticed here I've got a copy of a study that was put forward by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a left-of-center group that usually advocates expansion of various government programs. And they noted in 2003 that the earned income tax credit, they say in this study, directly lifted 2.4 million children and working families above the poverty line. Poor children before counting the EITC was 12.6 million, and poor children after counting the EITC was 10.2 million. And in that study, they used as their measure of poverty, they counted food, housing, energy assistance benefits as income and subtracted income and payroll taxes. As a share of anti-poverty benefits, is the portion of anti-poverty benefits that are currently not included in income when we determine the poverty level, is that share rising or falling?
Well, it's risen substantially in the last 30 years, rose a great deal in the last 6, and my guess is will continue to rise. That study, by the way, I want to mention, is typical of what many researchers do. They use the current poverty line, left and right. They use the current poverty line and count all these things that we don't otherwise count, not to say that material needs are solved, but just to see whether against some objective benchmark we've made progress over the last 5, 10, or 40 years. And what the Center on Budget Priorities report did, what the Joint Economic Committee's Democrats did, was show that these federal programs reduce measured poverty. That's important. It's an important part of the political debate. And that's why I think I've taken a quick look at your bill. I think something like that is tremendously important. The Census Bureau, there's some Census Bureau people here, they've started making that distinction, not to adjust the poverty line, just to show the impact of federal aid to low-income people. And that is, I think, a central part of understanding how well the government's doing and what's left to be done.
You know, if we continue to not count means-tested benefits, do you believe that the official poverty rate would actually be more inaccurate over time?
Well, there are many things that are making the official poverty rate as a measure of where we were in 1968 inaccurate. And I want to make the distinction. I agree with my colleagues here that you could do a lot of things to make this measure better. But there are many things that make the current measure inaccurate. I don't think it measures inflation well. It doesn't deal with many forms of income that low-income Americans get. The problem, I think, will fester and get worse. If we do increase, for example, the EITC, as has been proposed for single people, that would, in reality, have a major impact on their low income or poverty status, and the official measure would never capture it.
My chairman slipped me a note, says we're at 5 minutes left before the vote ends on the floor, so go as long as you want, he said. So I guess that's a reminder that I need to wrap up. The legislation that I've offered, I would note, does not determine the eligibility for benefits. It sets in place three formulas for determining the level of poverty. I think that should be part of this discussion as we determine how can we be more accurate. And since we were out of time, I do want to ask each of the witnesses take a look at the legislation I've introduced as part of this discussion. I welcome your ideas, and my door is open to discuss them. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Weller. I want to thank all the witnesses. My view of this is that there is no perfect answer. It would have been done a long time ago. And so I appreciate that not all the good ideas in the world come from the position politically where I am, nor where Mr. Weller is. And ultimately, I think in order to have some consensus as is described here, there's got to be consensus in the Congress. And it's got to be reached by us working together on this issue. And I appreciate all of your coming, giving your ideas. I suspect staff will be back from both sides to find out what you think of his bill and whatever we put out. And we thank you very much for coming. Thank you.